When I moved to Albania with Julian in 2007, I was job hunting for a while, and finally I got a job in a private clinic called the Austrian Clinic. Me being German and speaking German and Albanian was a great asset, and they were looking for a translator at first and an assistant with their surgeries. So in that clinic I was mostly alone with a few nurses, and ever so often, every weekend, an Austrian or a German surgeon would come and conduct surgeries. We conducted mostly plastic surgery because this clinic was targeting the wealthy in Tirana and in Albania, and it was quite expensive. Ever so often, some underprivileged and poor people would come and scrape together what money they had in the hopes to be treated. Unfortunately, my main job was to turn the people away that could not pay for the treatment. I did not work there very long. It was a business, not a charity. However, once the patients did make it through the door and they could see the surgeon, they were treated with care, compassion and diligence, without prejudice. One day a man came to the appointment with an Austrian orthopedic surgeon, hoping he would be able to help him. He had been an electrician. Now, most electricians in Albania are unqualified workers that get jobs on a day-to-day basis. There is no insurance, there's no safety measures, there's no protection. They're day-to-day laborers taking what they can. So a few months ago, this man had been working with a high voltage, and of course he received an electric shock and lived. However, the shock went through his right hand, up his arm, through his shoulder. The local hospital patched him up as best as they could. But essentially, he had entirely lost the use of his right arm. Now all there was left were large scars and burn marks, a few fingers, visible sinews, and a little bit of muscle tissue. The surgeon took his hand, moved it this way and that, moved the remaining fingers, looked how far the fingers could bend, which sinews were still functional, which muscles were still working, and tried to figure out whether anything could be done. And while he was examining the hand, while I was translating, the man started crying. We asked immediately whether he was experiencing any pain, but he said no pain. He was just so overwhelmed, because for the first time in months, somebody touched his hand without recoiling in terror, and touched him with care, recognizing his damage and looking at his hand with scrutiny. Sadly, there was nothing that could be done. His hand and arm were a mangled mess, and with the use of his hand, the man had also lost his job, his perspective, and his sustenance. There was another man who struggled with deformity and the devastating effects of it. He was a beggar, overlooked by many. He sat huddled by a gate, lifting up his arms for alms, but his gaze downcast. His story is recorded in Acts chapter 3. One day Peter and John were going up to the temple at the time of prayer at 3 in the afternoon. Now a man crippled from birth was being carried to the temple gate called Beautiful, where he was put every day to beg from those going into the temple courts. When he saw Peter and John about to enter, he asked them for money. Peter looked straight at him, as did John. Then Peter said, "Look at us." So the man gave them his attention, expecting to get something from them. Then Peter said, "Silver or gold I do not have, but what I have I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, walk." Taking him by the right hand, he helped him up, and instantly the man's feet and ankles became strong. He jumped to his feet and began to walk. Then he went with them into the temple courts, walking and jumping and praising God. All the people were filled with amazement at what had happened to this man. This man whom nobody looked at. This man whose deformity was so grotesque that people would recoil. A man who was well aware of his look and who could not bear to see the disgust or even the pity in people's eyes. A man who now avoided looking at people's eyes altogether. A man who was not seen, and a man who did not want to see anymore. Peter did not only see him, Peter looked straight at him. "Look at us," he demanded. "Look at us. Look up. We see you. We are looking at you. But you also must look at us." Their eyes met, and just that look made all the difference. "We see you. We know who you are. You are human. You're a person. You are a child of God." Now our daughter Albulena knows exactly who she is. We have many nicknames. Mostly we call her Lenchen. But as her mom, which is my right, I also call her with all my love, Schlumpfi. She hates it. She is Albulena and she loves her name. She does not want to be anything or anybody else. Sometimes we ask her, "Do you want to be a princess? Do you want to be an astronaut? Do you want to be a ballerina?" No. All she wants is to be herself, Albulena. She has recently learned how to write her name, and she is so proud. When she went back to kindergarten this week, that was the first thing she showed the educators, how she could write her own name. Her name makes her who she is. Being able to write her own name has made her realize that. When I later worked as a doctor with Adra in our mobile clinic, we had established to visit the Roma slums in and around Tirana. So we needed to make sure we had consent of the community. We wanted to be safe, and we did not want to be robbed or mugged or attacked, because all these things happen, and of course we had to take measures. So we normally sought out the leader of the camp, a male representative and also a female representative, and made a contract. In our first slum we went to, we made that contract with the camp leader and his mother. When it came to signing, his mother refused. We asked her, "Why don't you want to sign? Don't you give consent?" And she said, I do give my consent, but I can't read and I can't write." She shared the fate with many Roma women in the slum communities who did not have the opportunity to go to school, either because they were not allowed by their family or because as children they were mistreated and bullied in school. So many women grew up without ever having held a pen in their hand. We said, "It doesn't matter. Just sign. Make an initial. Make 3 crosses. Scribble something. We just need to know that you put your mark right here on this contract." So reluctantly, she took the pen, a little bit laboriously, and she scribbled. And suddenly her face lit up. She said, "That was so much fun. Can I sign something else?" So we were looking for more papers, and we just passed her random papers to sign. And she scribbled and scribbled away, and she had a great time. So often we talked about this scene because it was so touching and so moving. And out of that moment, we developed our most successful and best funded project in Albania, teaching literacy to underprivileged women of the Roma community. And it was amazing how just the ability to write their own names changed their lives. Women who had been working like slaves for their husbands and for their mothers-in-law had a name. Women who were forced into marriage, sometimes at the age of 12, had a name. Women who had given birth to more than 8 children and probably had just as many abortions by the age of 30 had a name. Women who were slaves, washerwomen, beggars, birthing machines, became daughters, wives, and mothers. They were children of God. They received an identity. We looked at them, and they looked at us. They looked up. Our eyes met at the same level. When God looks at us, He sees beauty. He does not only watch over us, but He looks right at us. The eyes of the Lord, writes David in Psalm 33, are on those who fear Him, on those whose hope is in His unfailing love, to deliver them from death and to keep them alive in famine. He knows who we are. He knows our name. Isaiah writes, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine." He sees our deformity. He sees our disability and our depravity. The psalmist writes, "You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in a secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days you ordained for me were written in your book, before one of them came to be." God looks at us, and He sees us, and when He sees us, He only sees perfection. To me, Aibulena is a perfect child. She's the most beautiful child in the world. To God, we, His children, are beautiful. There was a reason the beggar sat at the gate called Beautiful, because he was beautiful in God's eyes. God did not see deformity. He only saw beauty. Even when God created the earth, He looked at everything He had made, and it was very good. The gate called Beautiful is mentioned only in this passage, and it is actually not clear which gate it is. It is surmised that maybe the Eastern Gate, or now called the Golden Gate, was meant. It is believed that this was the gate through which Jesus entered on Palm Sunday from the east. The gate called Beautiful is actually a translation from Greek, and that adjective can mean 2 things. It can mean happening or coming at the right time, or beautiful, fair, or lovely. The Hebrew name for this gate is Gate of Mercy. According to Jewish tradition, the divine presence used to appear through the Eastern Gate and will appear again when the Anointed One, the Messiah, comes. Additionally, the gate is significant because according to tradition, on the holiday of Yom Kippur, a temple messenger was sent through this gate with a sacrificial lamb to the desert to atone for the sins of the people. Therefore, the gate holds historical and traditional significance and remains an indicator for the Messiah who is to come. For Christians, the Eastern Gate is the gate where Jesus made his triumphant entry, but it is also likely the gate he exited through to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane on the night of his arrest, and also the one he passed through 40 days after his resurrection, when his disciples accompanied him to the Mount of Olives before his last ascension into heaven. The gate of mercy, the gate through which the Messiah will return, the gate called Beautiful. We are sitting at this gate, the man deformed from birth, sitting at the gate called Beautiful. We are that man. God looks at us, and he tells us to look up, to look at him. He tells us to look into his eyes, as he looks into our eyes, because God sees only beauty in us. And in God's eyes, we find mercy. Amen.